I knew what Katrina did here was a result of a natural disaster. What I saw out there was a man-made disaster.
Katrina gave the government ammunition to tear down something that they had been planning for years and years to get rid of, which is public housing.
In the aftermath of the Katrina catastrophe, I think that a city looks at itself almost like an individual in a time of trauma. You say, am I leading the life I'm supposed to lead?
Right now we've got 52% unemployment as it relates to African American males, right? But we're experiencing an economic boom.
The mayor and too many of our business people wanted a market-based recovery, and that's what we got. We should have fought for a community-based recovery.
People, when they think of New Orleans, they would just think that like we are a beacon, like just everything is just great here. But it's not.
What we have to look at is the refusal to acknowledge race and the absolutely race-silent or race-averse approach to a lot of the way that the city and the federal government approach this.
They see the Mardi Gras, they look at the French quarters, all these things are truly happening. It has come back, but for the local people are not back. The local people are being pushed out of work, pushed out of housing, pushed into poverty.
Hi, I'm Laura Flanders. This week we're in New Orleans, a city known for its music, its cuisine, its culture, and Hurricane Katrina. 10 years ago, 80% of this city was underwater. Since then, $71 billion in federal money has been spent. But has every opportunity been seized to bring back not just the place, but its people, so they're stronger and healthier than before? That's our question this week on the Laura Flanders Show.
Well, we're standing here in the Ninth Ward, and 85% of it is still vacant.
Lieutenant General Russell Honoré, a Louisiana native, had just returned from Iraq when Katrina made landfall, and he was put in charge of the military rescue and relief efforts.
The problem was people in the city needed to be evacuated, and there were people going in places to get food and water. But when somebody saw an aberrant person walking out of a store sometime with a 52-inch TV on his back in waist-deep water, that became the shot of the day for national and international news, because the story became then about looting. And my job became put the guns down. These people need evacuation. They don't need guns pointed at them.
Weapons down, damn it!
The devastation of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina also revealed a corrupt and deadly criminal justice system.
Every time I've been looking at the news for like the last couple of months, the more insulted and the more pissed off that I become as I look at the police driving through our neighborhoods and making this make-believe line that this the line that I cannot cross. I went to Bywater a couple of weeks ago. I grew up in the Ninth Ward. I'm talking about I'm an alien in the neighborhood that I grew up in before Katrina.
Stand with Dignity is an organization of low-income black workers fighting for economic and racial justice.
The police that's in uniform have this pre-existing idea that a black life or black rights or black it don't exist. It don't exist. They don't need no reason to stop me.
The thing is to organize, because that's the missing ingredient that the people that's in power, the people that perpetuate these things, don't expect.
We got to begin to take it upon ourselves to begin to look at ourselves. How can we begin to keep organizing and police our own communities?
Post-storm, after the consent decree, when Eric Holder came in here and looked at the actual mechanics of the police department, it became clear to everyone, oh no, you're right, we haven't changed the way we're policing since close to Reconstruction.
Rosanna Cruz was one of those who fought for federal oversight of police and jail.
The movement to transform the criminal justice system, which has been led by community members and people who have spent time back in those cells, has managed to make incredible strides forward.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Milan Sherry helped write guidelines for the New Orleans Police Department aimed at preventing profiling of LGBT youth of color.
We have a large rate of homeless LGBT, particularly trans youth here in New Orleans. They face high rates of discrimination from employers, housing, like landlords, and just a huge part comes from New Orleans Police Department.
Police officers, vice crime officers were targeting transgender individuals, members of the LGBTQ community, and accusing them or arresting them or stopping them to talk to them about whether or not prostitution was going on or what was going on. When in fact, the person was coming from classes at Delgado.
At one point in time, it was like walking while transgender was a crime in New Orleans. For those girls that have been stopped, as far as like reporting back to us, their encounters with officers has been a lot different. Like I said, it's small progress, but it's definitely some progress.
The courthouse, the jail, the police department, they have not just a racial bias, but in some cases, an explicit practice of discrimination against primarily African Americans and also Latinos and other immigrant communities.
The Congress of Day Laborers, founded in 2006, has over 400 active members. They fight for economic justice and an end to police profiling.
Fuera la mina de Luisiana. Bueno, compañeros, como siguiente punto, vamos a discutir ahorita algo sobre nuestro enemigo común. Ay, ¿sabes? Dijo por ahí, ay.
¿Cuáles son los problemas que enfrenta la comunidad todos los días? Redadas.
The fight that actually exists and the fight that I actually grew up in is that like these Latinos or these Mexicans are coming here to steal our work. That's not the real fight. And we work together to show, like to prove that, to understand the story as to who are oppressing us, who is locking black workers out of work, and who is taking Latino workers into work and exploiting them.
¿Cómo es que esto funciona? ¿Verdad? Vemos que ICE no trabajan ellos solos. Siempre dependen de otras agencias para hacer el trabajo sucio de ellos. Entonces, ahorita queremos hacer una dinámica para que veamos más o menos cómo es que esto funciona.
We talk a lot, even though we don't share language. We communicate with each other. And we realize that we have a lot of, like we talked about that culture that New Orleans have, and we talked about the culture that comes from being oppressed.
Toya Lewis grew up in the Calliope projects, also known as B.W. Cooper. Tearing down public housing disproportionately affected black women, who were the majority of residents.
I grew up in Uptown in the Calliope projects, and as we speak today, the bulldozers are tearing down the apartments I grew up in.
One of New Orleans' fundamental problems is that it's too poor. It's too poor at every level. You know, even if you, it's just too poor at every level.
Sean Cummings is a developer who's played a big role in reshaping the city's downtown.
One of the things I think that New Orleans was challenged with for many, many decades And then in the aftermath of Katrina, had an opportunity to try and improve, was the concentration of poverty in public housing developments.
We tore down some of the most reliable, sturdiest, hurricane-proof buildings in America.
Oliver Thomas was city council president in the years after Katrina, and he joined a unanimous vote to tear the housing down.
We fell for HUD and the federal government's lie about one-for-one replacement and about using the money to uplift working class and poor people. That still hasn't happened 10 years later.
Coming up here in the Callio project, it was a village. Coming up, we had gardens, we had, people were close-knitted.
I've realized now how important community was back then, especially considering that it does not exist no more. And now they have makeshift buildings, Lego buildings, like walls that's already in place, just pick it up and push it up there and snap them together. And that's what people are living in now. And they pretty. Like they look good, they pretty, but they not worth shit.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, much of it from the federal government, was spent to tear down public housing and build these so-called mixed-income residences. Citywide, only 7% of former public housing residents were able to live in these new developments.
Hi, you was here when the Katrina?
Yeah, I stayed here for 2 weeks for Katrina.
It was
I was back helping people.
Glenn Ross is one of the very few former residents still living here.
This is some of the buildings. This is one of the buildings I was able to work on.
Right. This was I worked on a lot of these buildings out here myself.
I just framed it. The framework that you see is my framing, but this part wasn't done by me.
Yep.
It was a lot of cheap material. They saved it, and
if you want to count on the look is great, but the safeness, I can't give you a great answer on the strength that these places have.
Are you afraid living in here?
Yes. I'm afraid if Katrina come back. Because Katrina, these places can't take what those places took. I mean, it's a difference because it's bricks, but it's just not sturdy enough. It's not safe.
Alfred Marshall, a former resident, has been fighting for his community to get jobs in the reconstruction.
We had a lot of contractors come in and make those commitments and don't stick to their commitment.
Hey, I'm just a small guy.
Randy Silliman is the contractor overseeing the job.
Randy, 39% of the children here in New Orleans are living in poverty. The income gap, and that ain't right. People that's in control need to share the wealth. I know plenty of people making $10 an hour right now and can't pay their bills.
$10 an hour and won't pay the bills.
That's money, so why the locals are not being involved in the process of bringing New Orleans back or bringing Louisiana back?
Alfred says government officials made promises they later broke.
Corporations came in and made a commitment that to the 25% of the people that were left, that they would get the opportunity to rebuild their community, plus live in those houses. But that didn't happen.
Why do you think it happened this way?
By design. It was all to get rid of public housing.
These projects at one point in time housed hardworking, working poor families. They still house, just before the storm, hardworking, working poor families, but there was a stigma and there was a thought process that anyone living in affordable housing was lazy and sort of cheating the system. And that does a terrible injustice to the people that really are the backbone of our community. Our major industry is tourism, hospitality, restaurants, hotels, motels, and the folks who are working those jobs in the kitchen, making up the beds, cooking the food, those folks are the working poor in this town. It's just for generations they have not shared in the revenue in those industries.
Before people are being moved out of this city, house prices in this neighborhood are going up by as much as 10% per year. The house right behind me, less than 5 years ago, sold for under $10,000. Today, you can rent it on the Airbnb website for $800 a night. We asked what could have been done differently for a more just recovery. Spoken word artist Asia Rainey founded the Oya Market as a collective project for Black financial independence.
It's about 50 plus entrepreneurs represented, from products like hair care, skin care, clothing, jewelry, all the way to visual artists, photographers, local authors, musicians. So it's a little bit of everybody from the community in this room.
There's a lot of money that has been distributed in this city. Who's been getting all of those resources?
The average grassroots organization, they don't even always have the resources to have a grant writer on staff, or to even know how to navigate that system in a way where they could qualify for the grants that they need. So that's problematic to me. That's systemic. That's not because they didn't deserve it.
Over here is the living space, living room. Over here is the bathroom, will be. This is actually the same place the bathroom was historic.
This community land trust in the mid-city neighborhood of New Orleans is one attempt to renovate and improve a neighborhood without removing the people who live there.
So a land trust separates the land essentially from the buildings on the land, and the land is held in perpetuity. So it's very difficult to sell land in a land trust once it's in the within the organization, and that is designed that way on purpose. It's a way to preserve affordability because you take the land out of the speculative equation.
Katrina made New Orleans really the test case for how to spend those federal dollars. There's another process that could have been done that brought in locals who had to evacuate, bring them back into trailers, which would allow them to come back to their home with their families and set up temporary communities in which they could have, one, worked on debris removal, because you don't need a degree to sweep up dirt or to haul trash.
I haven't had a lot of experience with how all of that money was spent, but I did have the privilege of helping to invest a portion of that in reinventing the riverfront in New Orleans, and I think we spent that pretty well. I think the city's brand has been extended worldwide, even more deeply into the consciousness of people than it had been before. All sorts of young people coming here, filmmakers, furniture makers, glass casters, folks in the film industry, entrepreneurs, startup companies. They want to live in these historic neighborhoods, often on the Mississippi River. A certain amount of gentrification, I think, is actually healthy for New Orleans. And now the population is spread out and eliminated a lot of blight and crime that had existed in very proximate neighborhoods. So I think you just have to look at it at a little bit perhaps broader geographic perspective, where folks are displaced. Where actually are they displaced? Does it not make it a more robust community?
When we think about the ways in which we approach economic development in the city, it really is a historic, for lack of a better term, banana republic approach. We are giving it away for the benefit of those who will come here. And I really find that the mayor's approach, I tease him as the concierge in chief.
Because of the damage that's been left by the oil and gas industry, we have less wetlands today than we had 20 years ago. And the wetlands are being lost as we speak by the hour. It's been supported by Congress, multiple presidents in the White House, and all our governors. We're the second largest energy producer in America, and we're the second poorest state. So the state has been looted.
You know, I seen where when they started the working that local people that were here were not being able to work on the job site. That was literally across the street from their house.
One of the ways they criminalize us, one of the effects of them criminalizing us, is keeping us away from work and keeping us out of the economy. And one of the biggest things that's necessary in decriminalizing blackness is creating an equitable economy. Black workers are usually the workers who are paid the less. We are the people who have more criminal history. It's obvious that that's definitely by design. First thing an employer tell them when they hand them the application, or the first thing they see when they sign in the application is, have you been convicted of a felony?
2, 4, 6, 8, who do we appreciate? All the men, all the women, all the men in between.
Organizing looked different in New Orleans before. More older black people trying to get their communities together. It wasn't no Ford foundations putting money in their pockets for them to do that. And they didn't have 501c3s. So, you know, they did it the way they knew how. They raised the money the way they knew how, and they did what they could do for their community.
We're going to continue to organize. We're going to continue to fight back.
But it was our job to fix the city and make it even better than it was before so that folks might wish to come back.
I've heard people say when they go to New York, their heart beats faster. And I think when you come to New Orleans, I think it gives you rhythm if you don't have rhythm.
Folks think that gumbo and red beans and rice is created in some restaurant in the French Quarter somewhere. No. If folks in the lower Ninth Ward or on the West Bank or in these little neighborhoods, some grandmother's kitchen, weren't making those recipes, that stuff wouldn't exist. Period.
New Orleans is the greatest collection of survivors ever. Poverty, malaria, flood of 1927, Betsy, Camille, Katrina, more poverty, more neglect, more disparity, mass incarceration in Louisiana and New Orleans, the highest per capita. So we've survived anyway.
I think that the people who are trying to push people out, the people who are causing, I guess, gentrification is the word, know that they can't push everybody out. They need somebody that's gonna leave a bit of that culture. And, you know, I like to believe these oppressors are fucking smart. And they know that they're gonna need to have some poor people somewhere to make sure that they have a taste of this culture and they could like steal it.